Welcome back to Passport to Possibility, presented by J.H. Marlin. Most of the time when people talk about second citizenship, they picture one person getting a passport. In reality, Jennifer's clients are almost always families, parents thinking about education, safety, lifestyle, and long-term opportunity for their children, and even their parents. And there's a big new piece of global context for families who are interested in Africa. As we record this, China has just confirmed that from May 1st, 2026, it will grant zero tariff treatment to imports from 53 of all 54 African countries. For families thinking about building businesses, supply chains, or export-orientated careers around Africa, that kind of market access shift really matters. Today, Jennifer and I are going to talk about how families can use citizenship by investment and residency to open up options in two directions. Established Caribbean programs that offer safety, beautiful island lifestyles, and real family-friendly structures, and the newer African opportunities that sit on top of huge populations, booming markets, and now potentially better access into major external markets like China. If you're a family decision maker wondering how to build a long-term plan B, not just for travel, but for schooling, lifestyle, and business, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Jennifer, almost every week you're speaking with families, not just solo business people. Why are more families looking at citizenship and residency options now?
Families are looking for a combination of things: better education, options for their children, safer environments, more flexible travel, and the ability to relocate if their home country's politics or economy becomes unstable. They're also thinking generationally, so a second citizenship can give children access to universities, career paths, and healthcare they wouldn't have with just one passport, and in many cases that citizenship can be passed on to future generations. So instead of seeing this as buying a document, families increasingly see it as a long-term asset that changes the trajectory of their kids' and grandkids' lives.
So for most families, this isn't about collecting passports, it's about education, safety, and long-term opportunity across generations. Let's start with what people already know. Citizenship, Caribbean citizenship by investment. How do these programs specifically support families in practice?
The Caribbean programs are some of the most family-friendly in the world. St. Kitts and Nevis, Dominica, Grenada, Antigua and Barbuda, and St. Lucia all allow you to include a spouse, dependent children, often up to the age of 30, and in many cases dependent parents or grandparents and sometimes siblings. Antigua even has a specific University of West Indies Fund option that's designed for larger families. So from a family's perspective, that means one application can legally protect multiple generations at once, often at a far lower per person cost than doing separate applications. And critically, the processing times, typically 3 to 6 months, depending on the program, are short enough that you can realistically plan schooling, travel, and relocation around them.
So the Caribbean isn't just about quick passports. It's about effectively covering the entire family, often with better value per person than solo applicants. Numbers aside, families want to know, what is life actually like in these islands? How do you think about safety, lifestyle, and schooling options?
One of the reasons I've chosen to base my own life and practice in the Caribbean is that the islands are generally very safe by global standards, with tight-knit communities where people know each other and look out for one another. Each island has its own character. St. Kitts and Nevis, for example, combine historic charm with a strong sense of community, while places like Grenada or Antigua each have their own rhythm, beaches, and social life. On schooling, there are international and regional schools and even some specialist options. Some Caribbean islands, for example, are known for veterinary and medical schools, which can be interesting for families with children looking at those paths down the line. Combined with good weather, access to nature, and relatively low everyday stress compared with big cities, the Caribbean can be a very positive environment for children to grow up or spend part of the year in.
Right, so in practical terms, you're talking about safe, friendly island communities, each with a slightly different flavour, plus real schooling options, including specialist medical and veterinary routes, rather than just postcard beaches. So when families talk to you about their children, what do they care about most? How do second citizenships actually translate into educational and career options?
Three themes come up again: admissions, fees, and flexibility. Many universities in Europe, North America, and elsewhere have very different admission pathways, tuition levels, and scholarship structures, depending on the Caribbean or depending on the passport you hold. So Caribbean or future African citizenship can in some cases open doors or reduce friction compared with a more restricted passport. It also opens up the opportunity for internships and early career job options. And if your child holds citizenship in a country with strong visa-free travel or regional trade bloc membership, they can more easily attend conferences, potentially do internships, or take job offers abroad without being blocked by consular queues. So that flexibility is something parents increasingly value.
So this is really about making sure your kids can get into the schools and roles they're qualified for without their passports being the thing that holds them back. Now, let's switch gears to Africa, because this is where things get exciting for business-minded families. What's happening there, and why should a family even consider African citizenship as part of their path?
Africa is demographically and economically significant. The continent has roughly 1.3 to 1.5 billion people today and is on track to reach over, I believe, 2 billion by 2040. So it's also the world's youngest region with a median age of about 19, much younger than Europe or the Americas. So that means a huge growing workforce and consumer base, and economically, sub-Saharan Africa's growth is projected to accelerate into the mid 4% range around 2026 and 2027, driven by rising private consumption and investment as inflation cools and currencies stabilize. So the African Continental Free Trade Area connects about 1.3 billion people across most of the continent, with a combined GDP in the trillions of US dollars. For a family with a long time horizon, that combination, youthful population, rising consumption, and a continent-wide free trade framework creates meaningful opportunity.
We're talking about a continent with around 1.3 billion people, the youngest population on Earth, GDP heading toward the mid 4% range, and a multi-trillion-dollar free trade area. Serious numbers for anyone thinking beyond the next few years. Now, bring this down from macro to micro. How do specific African options like São Tomé Príncipe, Sierra Leone, and Botswana show up in a real family plan, especially now that China is implementing zero tariff access for 53 African countries?
So São Tomé and Príncipe is a fast, relatively affordable island citizenship by investment around US $90,000, with very competitive timelines and a structure that feels familiar if you know the Caribbean citizenship by investment. And for a family, it can function as an additional African anchor that complements existing Caribbean citizenship, especially for those who like the idea of a quieter Lusophone island setting. And if São Tomé is within the zero tariff list, it also becomes a potential springboard for export-oriented family businesses looking toward China in the medium term. In Sierra Leone, it's a different proposition through a blend of heritage and also an investment route at roughly US $140,000 for the fast track route. It offers citizenship alongside a local bank account and local company in a gold-rich, English-speaking West African country. So for entrepreneurial families, especially those in African diaspora, that can be a platform for building real businesses around mining services, logistics, processing, or agriculture, with the added benefit that from 2026, eligible exports into China may face lower tariff barriers than before. And Botswana is expected to launch around the $75,000, $90,000 US mark, and adds a Southern African option anchored in stability and governance, which can be attractive both as a regional operating base and over time as part of wider Africa-Asia trade flows. So together, these give families a way to combine lifestyle islands with high-growth continental opportunities and improved external market access.
So you might imagine a family with a Caribbean passport for mobility, São Tomé as a fast African add-on that could plug into future China trade, Sierra Leone as a going for gold ECOWAS and export base, and Botswana as a future Southern African foothold, all serving different roles in the same long-term plan. When you introduce African options to families, how do you balance opportunity with an honest conversation about risk and safety?
I'm very clear that frontier markets are not for everyone. There can be political volatility, uneven infrastructure, and regulatory changes. For families, the question is, does the upside access to a fast-growing young market with untapped business niches justify a measured level of risk in a carefully structured way? So this is also where diversification matters. A Caribbean citizenship in a safe, stable, neutral island state can anchor your family's day-to-day security, while an African citizenship can serve as an option on growth, a way to participate in the upside of a 1.3 billion person continent without making it your only bet. When you combine those with ancestry-based EU roots or residency in places like Cayman or the UAE, you can design a portfolio that balances safety, lifestyle, and opportunity.
So the message to families is use Caribbean and similar options to secure safety and everyday lifestyle. Then use Africa selectively as a growth and opportunity layer rather than going all in on one frontier play. For a family watching this and thinking, we should probably do something, what are the first practical steps in 2026?
So first, you may want to map out your family. Who do you want to include? Is that your spouse, children, parents, potentially grandparents or sibling, and what are their ages and stages? For example, if a child is approaching 30, that can be decisive for certain citizenship by investment programs. So second, to clarify your priorities. Is your primary concern education, mobility, lifestyle, business opportunity, or a combination? And third, look at diversification instead of obsessing over the single perfect program. So for many families, an established Caribbean passport plus an African option, and where possible, an EU ancestry route is more powerful than any one program alone. Finally, start the documentation process early. Birth and marriage certificates, police certificates, proof of funds, because those are often what slow families down. And we walk clients through the step-by-step and help decide which sequence, Caribbean, African ancestry, or residency makes the most sense.
Right. So the homework is map your family, define your priorities, think in terms of a small portfolio, not a single silver bullet, and then start gathering documents with guidance so timing and age cutoffs don't trip you up. Now, you and I have talked a lot about education and lifestyle, but coming back to this very fresh news from China, zero tariff access for 53 African countries from May 2026. What does that mean for how families should think about African citizenship over the next decade?
It means that for families who have entrepreneurial or business-minded children, an African citizenship isn't just a nice extra, it can become a real strategic asset. And if your family holds citizenship in a country that's part of African regional blocs like ECOWAS or SADC, and also benefits from zero tariff access into China, your children are potentially one step closer to building careers in companies that span Africa and Asia. It doesn't change the fundamentals. You still need to choose jurisdictions carefully, plan around risk, and make sure you have stable bases in places like the Europe, or Caribbean, or elsewhere. And for the right family, adding an African pillar now means your kids will, when they're adults, will have the right as these trade frameworks mature, which is exactly the kind of long-term thinking that we encourage.
So for families with an eye on the next 10 to 20 years, a combination of Africa's demographics, regional trade blocs, and now zero tariff access into a huge market like China is one more reason to take African citizenship seriously as part of the overall plan, not an afterthought. This has been Passport to Possibility, where we talk about real, structured ways families can secure schooling, lifestyle, and opportunity across multiple countries, not just theoretical passports. If today's conversation resonated with you, we've covered detailed deep dives on Caribbean programs, Botswana, São Tomé Príncipe, and Sierra Leone, as well as broader African citizenship opportunities for 2026. If you'd like help designing a strategy that combines safe, beautiful island bases with carefully chosen African growth options for your family, you'll find Jennifer's contact details in the description. Make sure you subscribe for more Passport to Possibility episodes, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Bye for now.